429 Adam, this is Central BCC. Adam Boy, Truck Unit 1, responding to 2189 Carroll's Road. High-risk warrant service.
Of all the things you could praise a tactical shooter for, its storytelling might not be immediately expected. SWAT 4 is unique in this way. It doesn't have an overarching narrative, instead choosing to use each level as an individual mood piece, which contributes to an overall painting of the East Coast. While Fairview is the fictional name given to the city, this is without a doubt New York, and an interpretation that feels frankly destitute through the lens of SWAT. It'd come as no surprise if your team bumped into Max Payne back at the precinct, because the city bears a striking tonal resemblance to the one he monologues his way through. An ever-present darkness, grit and grime, with run-down tenements and subsections of people that feel like they're completely disconnected from the way of life you or me might see as regular. Such a picture drawn by a tactical FPS might seem like a great calling card, but upon discovering SWAT 4 was developed by Irrational Games, it all made a lot more sense. If the studio has a legacy, it would be for its commitment to storytelling. Each level is packed with environmental detail that gives each one its identity. Rainbow Six 3, which came out a couple years prior, begins with a mission tasking you to take out some terrorists held up in an oil refinery. For comparison, my campaign in SWAT began with a nighttime search and rescue on the house of a serial killer ripped straight from the Silence of the Lambs. The tonal difference is striking, and in that regard, SWAT 4 sets itself apart in the way it forges its own identity. Some levels even play with genre. The pre-mission briefing of a high-risk warrant search on a tenement warns you to be aware of the presence of children in the building. As you clear each room with none to be found, the idea might sink in before you get your answer in the basement.
Doc, we found a graveyard in the basement. Looks like it's their children.
Copy that. Entry team notifying the morgue.
The hesitation in Tuck's reply over the radio tells you more than any exposition ever could. From bungled bank robberies to convenience store holdups, there's been a stoic professionalism to each job. Here, it slips. And with a soundscape composed by Eric Brosius, this game about taking on the role of an elite operator all of a sudden becomes sinister. No pre-mission brief or detailed planning could prepare you for some of the things that you see on the ground in SWAT 4. In that regard, it feels a lot more like a game in direct lineage to the legacies of the Thief and System Shock series, as a subsection of games that revolve around systems subverted by the creative use of narrative. If I were to tell you that Thief was just a series about sneaking around and stealing stuff, you might find that to be undercutting the experience when such levels as the Shellbridge Cradle or Haunted Cathedral exist. SWAT 4 gave me a lot of the same feelings, where my expectations were constantly subverted, in even small ways. The reason I find this so commendable was because Irrational could have easily just slapped together a generic tactical shooter, where you fight the same looking bad guys over and over again in uninspired environments, with little focus put on anything other than the task at hand, but they didn't. The effort put into making SWAT 4 distinct is what ultimately comes to define it as a great game. Anything else may have just left it in a pile of other innocuous takes on a genre that has since died out.
Take care of that room.
Let's roll.
Police!
Clear.
I keep up! Hands in the air! Get down!
Suspect implied. Contact has implied.
The detail-orientated ethos of the game's storytelling crosses over nicely with the equal attention given to the various gameplay systems and mechanics. Contrary to its surface as an FPS, SWAT 4 isn't actually about shooting people. Progression is tied to a scoring system that ducks points for conduct inappropriate to the context of law enforcement and procedure. For example, not reporting situational developments to Tuck, the unnecessary use of lethal force, and failing to secure evidence or locate civilians all contribute to the results of your debrief at the end of every mission. The best results come when you make an effort to resolve situations with as little lethality as possible. You can't just go around shooting suspects if they don't pose an immediate threat, which is where the mechanics come in to provide avenues to tackle things through varying methods. You'll probably push the button to shout compliance at people more often than you'll pull a trigger. The idea is that characters are to drop their weapons and surrender once you do so, but a lot of depth is squeezed out of just this one mechanic, supported by some well-conceived AI behaviour. Depending on who you're shouting at, their reactions may differ. A scared civilian may drop straight to their knees and give you no trouble, but a member of a well-established gang is probably gonna be a lot more stubborn to give up on their own turf. This is all dependent on context too, with some great little details shaping the edges. Catch a perp by surprise and they'll be more likely to comply without hassle. In areas where the police aren't popular, even innocent bystanders may refuse to cooperate. A bank robber may fake his surrender only to run away, and the petty criminal who's botched a simple stick-up may realise they're in way over their head and practically beg for the opportunity to give up.
Hands up and get down!
The behaviour of the AI adds a level of unpredictability into each level. Their placement is random and you can never feel too safe about a mission given the various ways it could go. A twitch in an enemy's movement could be the giveaway that they're going to try their luck and shoot you, or it could be a delay to them dropping their gun and surrendering. You can never be quite sure. In a way, it feels like a shooter where you're manoeuvring around eggshells. You've got to be genuinely careful, which again gets devilishly toyed with on part of the designers.
Do it now! Police!
Depending on the context, your mission briefings can be detailed and set you up well, or so vague that you basically know nothing. A public place may have open floor documents providing a good map layout on the entry screen, whereas another might be the rushed scribbles of a frightened witness on the back of a handkerchief. Here you can see how SWAT 4 relishes in its details. Things can easily go awry if you're not confident in executing a plan. Therefore, the game's real economy is not within reflexes and gun skill, but information. Everything about SWAT's simulation serves this idea. The detailed briefings, the audio cues from the AI, the environmental storytelling itself, the dialogue between the player and Tuck, as well as the snipers covering your blind spots, the options for squadmate video feeds, and finally the OptiWand being a useful but imperfect device, used to assess a room's safety but sometimes being genuinely difficult to pick out a civilian from a suspect and whether or not they're a danger. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how well armed you are, all the equipment in the world doesn't ease the anxiety of going headfirst into the middle of a subway station crossfire with absolutely no useful info whatsoever. In this regard, SWAT 4 captures a sense of trepidation, usually lacking within the genre. No matter how much you learn the maps or master the strategies, there will always be at least a small dose of crossing your fingers and hoping things go to plan, which is just as much of a hook that keeps you coming back as it is a fear that makes every room breach a teeth clencher. It stands to reason that the more realistic your shooter is, the less comfortable it is to play, and this was true for my experience with SWAT 4.
Get through there. Go.
Let's get in there,
Get
guys.
down! Hands in the air!
Forward.
Area clear.
Suspect is compliant.
The violence is uncomfortable too. The distant sound of gunshots flying into screaming crowds provokes a pants-shitting urgency, where you both want to rush in and try to save people, but are also scared that those shots could easily turn to you if not careful. Injured civilians as victims of violent circumstance genuinely drops a gulp down to the guts. It's blunt and awful looking. Engaging extremists, trigger-happy gangsters and naive stick-up artists is never a glorious job. It feels like a hard responsibility, but never fetishistic. SWAT 4 never becomes modern Call of Duty. It occupies an ambivalent space. Although you unquestionably do good in this game, there is a lot of flavour that acknowledges the increasingly questioned role of the police. Briefings note the force's unpopularity in certain areas of the city. Civilians will often lament the standard procedure of tying them up, as well as those that are outright offended by the idea, prompting use of non-lethal force to make them comply, rather than being able to talk them down. It's not a brazen critique, but I feel like it's a responsible portrayal. It doesn't sugarcoat things or prop them up as right or wrong. Instead, it leaves the player to draw their own conclusions on these details.
Guys, continuing on.
Hands in the air! Get down!
Positions is clear.
Police, put your hands up! Police, on your
Just
knees!
help me get outta
Police,
here.
put your hands up!
I'm an
Police,
innocent
get down
bystander.
now! Hands in the air! Get down!
Make her secure.
I want to reference the Call of Duty mission Clean House from the 2019 Modern Warfare reboot in comparison. SWAT 4 achieves the sense of tension and distant violence in a way that's strictly player driven. As much as the narrative undertones of SWAT 4 drives a lot of the mood, they remain fringe elements that never intrude on the mechanics. Where Call of Duty uses tight scripting to achieve its tonal goals in Clean House, SWAT 4 not only avoids these constraints, but does a lot more without the need for the developer's interference, which is admirable. Irrational embraces the mechanics-driven nature of the tactical subgenre to enhance their tonal and narrative ambitions. Combined with its random elements, these experiences can also vary every time you replay a level, whereas Call of Duty is one thing only, every time, as dictated by the cemented script. Thus it's notable that the thematic conclusions a player might come to in relation to questionable ethics in the police force, the realities of violence, and the need for such a team of operators to even exist, is all drawn purely from gameplay. No cutscenes, no exposition. While I think Call of Duty dips its toe into similar water, it just goes to show how impressive SWAT is that it can do more with apparently less.
Take it easy there.
Hands in the air! Get down! Get down! Hands in the air! Get down!
SWAT!
Get down!
What took you so long?
Police!
Police!
Put your hands up!
Undercover Agent Jennings! Keep an eye out for Koshka. He's
Talk,
bad
this is
news and
entry
he
team.
doesn't like losing.
Suspect cuffed and entry team to talk. We have contact with Jennings.
Copy. Bring him home.
It's when all of its elements work together that SWAT 4 excels, but there are times where the cogs don't always fit. In single player, your squad AI are clumsy. I've seen them fail at throwing grenades into doors, block entrances, not respond to commands, act oblivious to enemies, and sometimes embody the philosophy of that Danny DeVito meme, where you'll be wanting to take a careful, non-lethal approach, and they just start shooting. That's really all there is nagging at the game though, and it especially doesn't detract from its subtle achievements. Tactical shooters can so often fall into dry territory when it comes to their narrative and aesthetic attempts. What Irrational has achieved with SWAT 4 is nothing short of surprising and subversive. There are stories here told purely through the environment and implication that are more exciting, engaging and evocative than even narrative-driven FPS games being released today. And they're backed by an easy to learn set of strategic systems that allow a player the agency of approach to also create stories on their own.
Stack up and check the lock.
Hell yeah. I'm on it.
It's open.
Check that room.
Let's roll. Trailers, let's
Drop
go.
your weapons!
Hands up.
He's not compliant.
Jack, non-compliant.
Hands up and get down! Get those hands down! Now!
Suspect has complied. Stay
Hands in
down.
the air! Get down!
What about the cuffs, sir?
Don't touch me!
Entry
Don't
team
touch
to
me!
talk.
Take her
We'll
into
get to you
custody.
in a minute.
On it, sir.
Alright folks, thanks a lot for watching first of all, but I figured I'd tack on this segment at the end because there was a certain number of things about the game that didn't make it into the essay, so to speak, and I thought I'd just shout them out at the end here just to sort of cap off the video. First things first, I was using the Elite Force mod by Easy Street, which basically acts as essentially SWAT 4's very own sort of HD remaster. I think it has some literal HD effects. I know it allows 1080p function to be selected throughout the settings menu, field of view options, various other visual options as well are in the what do you call it? You know, the game settings. Also, I think it adds some weapons. I think it tweaks some of the scoring and it tweaks some of the simulation aspects. So it adds a layer of, I guess you could say, realism. For example, say if you got an elderly NPC and you tase them, that's gonna have more of effect on them, potentially turning lethal, than it would be, say, if you were just tasing some gangster dude. You know, old person heart problems plus tasers, not gonna gel well. Although that didn't seem like, if that seems like kind of like hardcore kind of details, it didn't intrude too much in my experience. So it, you know, it's a touch, it's like a flick of paint extra onto the game itself. So I really recommend that. It's the mod by Easy Street. I'll probably put a link in the description. Other things that might remedy this game, I'm not sure if servers I'm not sure if you need a server or if you could do just kind of like peer-to-peer to connect on co-op, but if co-op's available, I didn't play the game on co-op, but I imagine this, if you can get a full squad together to co-op this, I can imagine this is going to be one hell of a fucking game to co-op. I personally didn't get the chance to do so because I have no friends and but I think, yeah, just if you can do a bit of research to see if the co-op is functional. If it is, I think it would be an incredible co-op experience. And on top of that, I think if you're just looking for a game that has a lot of good immersive qualities, you know, a lot of a detail-oriented approach to its just its whole presentation, SWAT 4 is definitely that game. You know, just the little touches to the briefings from your mission handler, and then you can select the 911 calls, so you know, and they've got the whole sort of phone call filter over them, and they're acted out really well. You know, get a good pair of headphones, like, and the sound design really would work well with that. You know, it's very it has that detail-oriented approach that really sits you within the context of, you know, the SWAT sort of aesthetic, I guess you could say. Is, you know, it's got a lot of immersive qualities like that. So if you're kind of a detail-oriented sim head, so to speak, whether or not you like your mechanics being deep, or whether or not you prefer a focus on immersion within the tactical genre, SWAT 4 hits all those nails on the head. It is a very immersive game, and just everything about it is executed very well. Only thing, like I said in the essay, just to reiterate, is that the AI can kind of be a bit jank sometimes, but honestly I'd say maybe that's a 70-30% occurrence. You know, most of the time they work fine, but you know, you get the odd times where shit just doesn't add up. But to be honest, I don't think that really impacts the game in any way for me to not recommend it. So I guess I just tagged this on at the end just to clarify a few points and just say thanks for watching. Yeah, if you're gonna get it, get the Easy Street mod, Elite Force mod by Easy Street. Link in the description, all that. Yeah, I think that's that. But yeah, safe. Thanks for watching, and au revoir.